What if I told you that a Republican just came in first place in the California governor's primary in the deepest blue state in America? That Republican turnout in California is running 12% higher than it was in 2022 when the GOP won back Congress. And that in Los Angeles County alone, Republicans out-registered Democrats by over 100,000 voters in a single month at a ratio of 10-1. Stick around, because what happened next will blow your mind. A political earthquake just hit California. Not the kind that cracks foundations and buckles highways, the kind that cracks political parties and buckles entire electoral strategies. Because what happened in California's jungle primaries yesterday is not a local story. It is a national emergency for the Democrat Party. And if they are not panicking this morning, they are not paying attention. For 30 years, the Democrats have treated California as their permanent, unassailable fortress. The state that would never, could never, under any circumstances, be competitive for Republicans. The state where Democrat voter registration outnumbers Republican registration nearly 2-1. The state that the political establishment on both sides wrote off as forever blue, never to be contested, never to be challenged, never to be threatened. Last night, that fortress shook, and the cracks are spreading. If you believe that what just happened in California proves that no state is permanently blue and that 30 years of progressive failure are finally catching up with the Democrat machine, smash that like button right now. Every click helps us spread the word that the political realignment has arrived in the last place anyone expected. Because by the end of this video, you will understand exactly how a Republican came in first place in the California governor's primary. How Spencer Pratt just forced a runoff against incumbent Mayor Karen Bass in Los Angeles. What the voter registration numbers reveal about a seismic shift happening beneath the surface. Why Republican turnout is surging across the state at levels that have not been seen in years. And what all of this means for the midterm elections in November and the Democrats' desperate hope of taking back the House. Now let me start with the governor's race, because what happened last night was not supposed to be possible. California runs what is called a jungle primary. All candidates from all parties run on the same ballot. The top two advance to the November general election regardless of party. The Democrat strategy was simple, and it was supposed to be foolproof. Run two strong Democrat candidates, let the Republican come in third, and guarantee that the November election would be a Democrat versus Democrat race with no Republican alternative on the ballot. The plan blew up in their faces. With over 60% of the vote counted, Steve Hilton, the Republican, came in first place, in California. A Republican leading the pack in the governor's primary of the most reliably Democrat state in the entire country. Hilton is sitting at approximately 27 to 28% of the vote. The top Democrat, Ami Bera, is trailing at around 25%. And billionaire Democrat Tom Steyer, who spent a fortune on his campaign, limped in at roughly 20%. Third place, a billionaire Democrat spending tens of millions of dollars finished behind a Republican in California. A Republican is officially leading the race to become the next governor of California. That sentence would have been considered delusional 2 years ago. It would have been dismissed as fantasy, as wishful thinking, as the kind of thing that only people who do not understand California politics would say. And it just happened. Now, I want to be clear about the challenge ahead. Steve Hilton is going to have to go head-to-head with the top Democrat in November. And California's voter registration advantage is enormous. Democrats outnumber Republicans nearly 2-1 in registration. The coastal population centers are heavily progressive. This is going to be an incredibly difficult fight. But look at the map from last night. If I showed you the map of California's primary results with no context and asked you which party dominates the state's politics, you would say without hesitation that it is the red team. The map is overwhelmingly red. County after county after county went for the Republican. The geographic footprint of Republican support in California is massive. It stretches across the interior, the agricultural regions, the suburban communities, the small cities and towns that make up the real California that exists outside the coastal bubble. The Democrats hold the population centers. They hold Los Angeles and San Francisco and Sacramento. But the rest of California, the California where people grow food and build things and run small businesses, is Republican territory. And last night, those voters showed up in numbers that stunned everyone. Now, let me show you the turnout numbers, because this is where the story goes from surprising to historic. California Republican turnout yesterday was 12% higher than it was in 2022. 12%. Let that number sink in. 2022 was the midterm cycle where Republican enthusiasm was already surging, where the GOP won back control of Congress, where Republican turnout nationally was considered very strong. And California Republicans just beat that number by 12%. In Orange County, Republicans were up by 10,000 ballots over Democrats. In San Diego, Republicans were running at nearly double the Democrat turnout rate. Double in San Diego. These are not traditionally Republican strongholds in the way that rural Central Valley counties are. These are major population centers where Republican turnout is surging at rates that are reshaping the competitive landscape of the state. This is not a blip. This is not a one-day anomaly. This is the culmination of a voter registration trend that has been building for months and just manifested in actual votes. Look at the registration numbers. California GOP voter registration is up 14% since 2022, 14% in 4 years. Meanwhile, Democrat voter registration has been relatively stagnant. They are not growing. They are treading water. The gap is closing. Not fast enough to flip the registration advantage, not yet, but fast enough to make races competitive that were never competitive before. Fast enough to put a Republican in first place in a governor's primary. Fast enough to change the math in congressional districts across the state. And then look at what happened in Los Angeles County. This number is so extraordinary that I need you to really absorb it. In the month of May alone, Republicans registered 138,000 new voters in Los Angeles County. Democrats registered 10,000. 138,000 to 10,000. That is not a gap. That is a chasm. A 13-to-1 ratio in new voter registrations in the single most populous county in the most Democrat state in America. Something fundamental has changed. The people of Los Angeles are registering Republican at a rate that has no precedent in modern California political history. And they are doing it in the middle of what the media keeps telling us is a blue wave year. Now let me tell you about Spencer Pratt, because the Los Angeles mayoral race produced an earthquake that was just as powerful as the governor's primary. Spencer Pratt, the former reality TV star whose own home burned down in the Palisades fire, watched the city's leadership fail catastrophically in the aftermath of that disaster. He watched Karen Bass jet off to Ghana while the city burned. He watched the fire department's budget get cut by $17 million and the money redirected to homeless services that produced no results. He watched his neighbors lose everything while the political class shrugged and moved on. And instead of just tweeting about it, he decided to do something about it. He ran for mayor. And he did not just run. He redefined what a political campaign looks like in the modern era by producing AI-generated campaign ads that were so creative, so effective, so viral, that they generated more enthusiasm and attention than anything Karen Bass's campaign has produced in 4 years of incumbency. The result? With nearly half the votes counted, Karen Bass is at roughly 36 to 37%. Spencer Pratt is at approximately 30%. Bass and Pratt are headed for a head-to-head November runoff. A reality TV star just forced the incumbent mayor of the second largest city in America into a runoff. He came within single digits of the incumbent despite having no political experience, no party infrastructure, and no establishment support. Pratt has already declared he is ready to debate Karen Bass one-on-one, as many times as she will show up. And based on her track record of avoiding accountability, she will probably refuse to share a stage with him because she knows he will demolish her. His campaign is running on common sense, not partisan tribalism, not ideological purity tests, common sense solutions to problems that every Angelino can see with their own eyes. Homelessness, crime, fentanyl, the fire response failures, the cost of living. These are not Republican issues or Democrat issues. They are quality of life issues. And Pratt is winning support from Democrats, independents, and Republicans alike because he is the only candidate who is talking about what actually matters to the people who live in Los Angeles. Now let me zoom out and explain what all of this means for the midterms, because the national implications of what happened in California yesterday are enormous. The latest generic ballot poll from Marquette University shows Democrats ahead by just 1 point among registered voters. 1 point. That is a statistical dead heat. The generic ballot is the single best early predictor of which party controls Congress after a midterm election, and it is showing a dead heat in what is supposed to be a blue wave year, in what is supposed to be the cycle where Democrats surge back to power on the strength of anti-Trump sentiment. There is no surge. There is no wave. There is a 1-point lead that is shrinking with every passing month. And here is what makes that 1-point lead even more meaningless. The generic ballot measures national sentiment. It does not account for the structural advantages that Republicans have locked in through redistricting. Republicans netted 10 additional seats through the redistricting wars. Those seats are baked into the map. They do not show up in the generic ballot, but they absolutely show up on election night. A 1-point Democrat lead on the generic ballot combined with a 10-seat Republican redistricting advantage means the Democrats are functionally behind, not ahead, behind. And now California is in play, not in the sense that a Republican is going to win the state in a presidential election, but in the sense that Democrats now have to spend money defending California. Every dollar they spend defending Karen Bass in Los Angeles is a dollar they cannot spend defending swing seats in Michigan, Pennsylvania, and Georgia. Every dollar they spend trying to stop Steve Hilton in the governor's race is a dollar they cannot spend on competitive House races in the Midwest. The Republicans just forced the Democrats to play defense in their own fortress. And when you are defending your fortress, you are not attacking anyone else's. Resources are finite. Attention is finite. Campaign money is finite. And the Democrats just discovered that they have to allocate a meaningful portion of all three to a state they thought was locked up forever. This is the definition of an expanding electoral map. When the opposing party has to defend territory it thought was safe, the map expands. When the map expands, resources get stretched thin. When resources get stretched thin, seats that were supposed to be safe become competitive. And when safe seats become competitive, wave elections become impossible because the party cannot concentrate its firepower. The Democrats needed every resource concentrated on 15 to 20 competitive House races. Instead, they are now fighting on 30 or 40 fronts. In California, in Oregon, where a Republican is leading in the governor's race. In every redistricted state where new Republican seats have been drawn. In every battleground state where voter registration is surging toward the GOP. The front lines are everywhere. And the Democrats do not have the money, the infrastructure, or the enthusiasm to defend them all. Now, let me put the voter registration piece in context, because this is not a California-only phenomenon. It is a national pattern that is accelerating in every state that tracks voter registration by party. In all 30 states that register voters by party, Republicans have been outperforming Democrats. All 30. Not most, not a majority, all of them. Every single state that tracks registration by party is showing the same trend. Republicans gaining, Democrats losing or stagnant. The registration advantage is shifting toward the GOP in Florida, Iowa, Pennsylvania, North Carolina, Arizona, Nevada, and now even in California. Yesterday's primary results are the first tangible electoral evidence of what those registration trends have been predicting. The voters who registered Republican over the last 2 years showed up yesterday. They cast ballots. They pushed a Republican into first place in the governor's primary. They forced a runoff in the Los Angeles mayor's race. They produced turnout numbers that exceeded 2022 by 12%. The registration trend became an electoral reality overnight. And the shift is happening even in demographics that were supposed to be permanently blue. Beverly Hills voted for the Republican in significantly higher numbers than anyone expected. Young voters are moving to the GOP at rates that are reshaping the electorate. Historically deep blue demographics are swinging Republican by double digits. The coalition that Democrats have relied on for a generation is fragmenting. And it is fragmenting fastest in the very state that was supposed to be the most secure foundation of that coalition. Let me bring all of this together with the bottom line. What happened in California yesterday is not about Spencer Pratt. It is not about Steve Hilton. It is about something much bigger and much more powerful than any individual candidate. The people of the most progressive state in the nation are rejecting what 30 years of one-party Democrat rule has done to them. They are rejecting what it has done to their streets, their schools, their safety, and their cities. The wildfires, the rampant homelessness, the fentanyl epidemic, the cost of living that has made California one of the most unaffordable states in the country, The businesses fleeing, the families leaving, the children receiving the worst education money can buy. The voters are finally connecting those failures directly to the Democrats who have governed California without opposition for a generation. They are making the connection that the media has spent 30 years trying to prevent them from making. The connection between who governs and what happens, between who is in charge and what the results are, between who you vote for and what your daily life looks like. And now that connection has been made, it cannot be unmade. Once a voter realizes that the party they have been supporting is responsible for the conditions they are living in, that realization does not go away. It does not fade with the next news cycle. It does not get erased by a clever campaign ad. It stays, it grows, it spreads, and it shows up at the ballot box. That is what happened yesterday in California. 30 years of progressive failure reached a critical mass. The voters showed up, and they produced results that the political establishment said were impossible. A Republican in first place for governor, a populist outsider in a runoff for mayor of Los Angeles. Turnout 12% higher than the last midterm cycle. Voter registration surging at a 13-to-1 ratio in Los Angeles County. The bluest state in America shaking beneath the feet of the party that thought it owned it forever. The political earthquake has hit. The aftershocks are just beginning. And by November, the tremors will be felt across the entire country. Don't stop here. The California ballots are still being counted, and the November races are shaping up to be the most competitive in the state's modern history. Click on the next video as we continue to cover the political earthquake in California and the national realignment that is reshaping the electoral map of the entire country.